Live. Okay, Facebook stream is live. Thank you very much. Let's begin.
Good afternoon from New York, and welcome to our capacity development webinar on leveraging digital government and spearheading innovative digital solutions to address the COVID-19 pandemic in the Caribbean SIDS. We are very pleased to have about 400 registered participants from over 80 countries. My name is Jennifer Bergen, and I am Senior Interregional Advisor from the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government. The Small Island Developing States unit of UN DESA has also contributed to the organization of this webinar. I would also like to extend our thanks to our partners, the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America, the Caribbean Community Secretariat for the excellent collaboration between our organizations, and to the Caribbean Telecommunications Union for creating space for this webinar within this year's ICT week. UN DESA would also like to welcome a group of excellent speakers from the region. Before we start, I would like to go over a few practical items. First of all, the webinar will be recorded and live streamed on DESA Facebook. You will have the opportunity to pose your questions through the chat function on both WebEx and Facebook. I would like to ask the panelists to make their contributions within 7 minutes so that we leave enough time for Q&A session. And also ask speakers to mute their sound and switch off their camera when they do not speak. The COVID-19 virus has had a very disruptive impact across the globe and has exacerbated the challenges already facing the vulnerable, resource-constrained Caribbean states, which are currently also confronting the threat of a very active hurricane season. Today's webinar explores how digital government can help the Caribbean states to address the challenges. We'll now begin the opening session, and it is my great honor to introduce Mrs. Francesca Spatarisano, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination and Interagency Affairs, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, who will deliver her opening remarks. Assistant Secretary General, you have the floor.
Hello, and thank you very much. Madam Prime Minister of Aruba, Evelina Weaver-Cross, and Mr. Mario Cimoli, the Deputy Secretary of UN ECLAC, Mr. Joseph Fox, the Assistant Secretary General in the CARICOM Secretariat of Trade and Economic Integration, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, it is an honor for me to welcome you to the Capacity Development webinar on leveraging digital government and spearheading innovative digital solutions to address the COVID-19 pandemic in the Caribbean region. I extend heartfelt thanks to our partners, which were just mentioned, the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean Community Secretariat, for the excellent collaboration between our organizations, and to the Caribbean Telecommunications Union for creating space within this year's ITU week for this webinar. In a matter of months, as you all know, almost 30 million people have globally been infected with the coronavirus, COVID-19. Many have died. Health systems have been overwhelmed. Economies have been decimated, and the social fabric of many countries stretched to a breaking point. Small island developing states have not been spared. COVID-19 has actually exacerbated their already existing challenges, which could potentially lead to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the Samoa Pathway. Against this backdrop, today's webinar aims to explore how digital government can help Caribbean SIDS to address those challenges. And as we were saying, there are many challenges. In particular, SIDS require special attention given their small economic base, coupled with their already high and growing debt servicing costs. The GDP of SIDS will likely shrink by 4.7% in 2020, which is more than the global average. Another challenge, increasing poverty and inequality, which can undermine the ability of these economies to withstand natural disasters. And also SIDS have relatively weak healthcare systems. The infection and mortality rate could rise when countries reopen their economies, as we have observed in other places. So what can ICT do for us in this context? The pandemic is forcing governments and societies in the Caribbean to leverage digital technologies and innovative solutions to respond to the crisis in a number of ways. First, digital technologies can help to reinvent existing policies and approaches in order to improve resilience, efficiency, and competitiveness. Second, many countries have already effectively deployed ICTs and digital government instruments to provide services, particularly in the health and the education sectors. Third, ICTs are also used in a number of countries to promote social inclusion and economic growth, despite the technical challenges that still remain. SIDS can take advantage of this crisis to develop forward-looking policy and regulatory frameworks for a digital government-based innovation system. How can that be done? Well, the first message is a call to the Caribbean governments to adopt an open government approach and to use digital communication channels to provide accurate and timely information on COVID-19 and enable the participation of vulnerable groups. The second message is to emphasize the need to foster capacities of the public sector to deliver services through well-orchestrated national and local digital government strategies. The COVID-19 pandemic has uncovered institutional weaknesses in the area of multi-level government coordination, also policy coherence and digital skills in particular. Not only in SIDS, of course. My third message is the pledge to reduce the digital divide among countries and social groups, particularly in the health and education sectors. Initiatives that improve digital literacy for free should be encouraged. And there is some interference, yes.
This is
Finally, and this is my fourth message, this human crisis can only be defeated with a responsible and cooperative international and regional response. Caribbean SIDS to date have announced a stimulus package estimated at around somewhere between 1% and 4% of GDP. And this is an amount which is important, but clearly insufficient to mitigate the catastrophic impacts of the twin health and economic crisis. Therefore, governments will be required to adopt a regional approach to collaborate more on the common challenges and solutions. As the UN Secretary General said during the launch of the policy brief on the impact of COVID-19 on Latin America and the Caribbean, and I quote, "The international community must come forward to prevent the economic devastation of small island economy. Latin American and Caribbean countries, and in particular small island developing states, should not be excluded from global assistance. I appeal to the global community to leave no one behind, especially not the vulnerable countries, and in particular SIDS. So building back better, as we all want to do, requires transforming the development model of Latin America and the Caribbean, and it requires developing comprehensive welfare systems that are accessible to all. In conclusion, through today's exchanges, I am confident we will gain new insights on how governments are leveraging digital government to address COVID-19 in the Caribbean. UN DESA stands ready to help member states in pursuing a sustainable and resilient recovery. And I wish you a fruitful discussion, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary General. I have the pleasure now to introduce the Prime Minister of Aruba and Minister of General Affairs, Integrity, Energy, Innovation and Government Organization, Mrs. Bruce Weber, who will speak about the role of digital government and transformation in Aruba's recovery plan. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, the Caribbean Community, and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union for your support in convening this side event and inviting me to speak here today. It should come as no shock that a pandemic has brought about an unimaginable scenario in the Caribbean and the world around. This stark reality has caused for a strengthened resolve and commitment that we want to build back better. And this requires transformative action and in determination to go digital and make e-government the central point of our recovery agenda. As a matter of fact, since 2018, the government of Aruba has made digital transformation a priority, with key policy measures and tools to make our government more efficient and more transparent. We are finalizing a digital transformation roadmap with the support of the Estonia e-Governance Academy. Following this mindset in our response to the challenges caused by COVID-19, we are working to provide a contactless way of doing things to ensure citizens remain safe and allow for businesses to continue operating in a safe manner. The impact of COVID-19 has compelled the government to realign the scope of its transaction strategy. We drafted a new economic recovery and innovation plan. We called it Repositioning Our Sales, and a crucial part regarding the improvement of our digital infrastructure. To enhance our digital capabilities now and in the future, it is essential that we invest in the technological development right now to address digital payments, legal consequences, and privacy aspects. This recovery plan is devised to propel smart, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth and is grounded on transparency, integrity, and a human-centered development. Transparency by improving government services, by sharing data, by safeguarding privacy and cultivating trust. Integrity in how we treat our environment and move forward towards a more equal society. And human-centered development, ensuring inclusivity, a focus on the needs of those most vulnerable, and continuing educational and training programs so all citizens can reach their potential. The digital transformation is paramount to achieving the necessary transformation. A cornerstone of my administration is establishing an integrity policy to increase transparency, to strengthen good governance practices, and to combat corruption. For our integrity strategy to stick, we need to link it to our e-government plans. As you know, it's hard to bribe a computer. For Aruba, e-government and integrity of government go hand in hand. At the end of the day, e-government is about serving our citizens better so they can have a better quality of life and economic development. The e-government is a tool, a means to an end. We are looking at this form of holistic perspective on our path towards recovery and to build back stronger, to leave no one behind while focusing on innovative solutions to address challenges that humanity has never faced before. Aruba will not only bounce back, but more importantly, bounce forward, focusing on triggering a ripple effect and catapult us into being an innovative and resilient island. We will do so with a firm commitment and in unity with like-minded partners, both locally and internationally. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for sharing your experience and for highlighting also the importance of transparency and governance issues. Thank you for contributing to this webinar. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Mario Cimoli, Deputy Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Mr. Cimoli, you have the floor. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, to have our partners, DESA, CARICOM, and Caribbean Telecommunication Unit. Really, it's a pleasure to have this initiative together. I want to send my regards to Evelyn Weather-Cross, Prime Minister of Aruba, to my friend Francesca Spatolisano, Assistant Secretary of General for Policy Coordination and Interagency Affairs, Joseph Cobb, Assistant Secretary General Trade and Integration of CARICOM, and Miguel Casmer, Acting Secretary General of Caribbean Telecommunication Union. I want to send my regards particularly to Diane Quarles, that is our chief in the Caribbean in our office, that make it a very good job there. And I think it's very difficult to add what you said here and to put clearly that the impact that this crisis and this situation have on Caribbean was very high. We estimated that the GDP in the Caribbean area is going to be very in contraction. It is going to be very high, about 5.4%. This is that estimation on that, and clearly this is impacting really strongly in the whole economy, sectors, production, capabilities, jobs, and many other aspects that have to be with the life of people. And clearly in this context, we are understanding that ICT is becoming more and more important for the good reason and also for the bad reasons. Not everything is not to be uniform, it's going to be very, very similar. For the good reason, because technological change has an important impact on production capability and the participation in the more competitive scenario for all Caribbean countries. For the bad reason, because this transformation is impacting really the way to work of firms, the layout of the plants, sector. Tourism is not to be the same sector that we have knowing before. It's completely another sector. With this transformation is going to be an important impact on the capability to us to have more job and so on. This is probably going to impact on job. We need more and more diffusion of this technology. And there is an important asset that this region has. And I think it's an important step to begin and to reinforce is the CARICOM single ICT space vision. Because there is an important coordination on policy. There is a background condition to creating competitiveness. There is an important vision to transform sector and capability. We have to build in this important single ICT space vision, and we can call also the important ICT market in the Caribbean areas is going to be an important step, because this is going to be the step for the inclusive digital society. We need to reduce the gap. We need to abort the process that I create in more inequality and more margination of different people, to promote transformation and production, to transform clearly, because it's an important sector, what is the sector of tourism in all the Caribbean area, to more coordination, to transform the quality of the sector, to create a basis of digital, and digital transformation is going to be very, very important, to create it and to support digital trust and security. All of countries in the Caribbean area have to use this system, and to create more and more trust and security based on this digital aspect, to create more cooperation across country in that region, but more cooperation also that is an important market have to be developed with all Latin American countries, and to rethink transformation at the life of new technology. For example, 5G technology to transform cities and everything like that is going to be an important step. We hope that this seminar and this participation hope to create more coordination and to understand how we transform digital technology and a positive step to create more integration, to have a recovery. I think it's going to be a very hard recovery for whole country in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we have to rethink technology. The problem is not to accept this technology something has to be passive, has to be active, industrial policy, technological policy, inclusive policy. I hope that this seminar is going to be important, and I hope also that this CARICOM single ICT space is going to be an important step and has to be the platform for all of this policy. I want to send again to our friend for DESA, CARICOM, and Telecommunication Union of the Caribbean area, because we together have to be a support of all countries. A country have to feel that we are stay with us, with them, and to support all of their industrial and technological policy in some way. Thank you very much, and I hope that you have a very good seminar.
Many thanks, Mr. Chimori, for your passionate introducing remarks, and I think more attention will be given to the CARICOM ICT space during this webinar. I would finally like to introduce Mr. Joseph Cox, Assistant Secretary General Trade and Economic Integration of the CARICOM Secretariat, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Joseph Cox, the floor is yours.
You see me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Her Excellency, Ms. Evelyn Weaver-Crowes, Prime Minister of Aruba, and Minister of General Affairs, Integrity, Energy, Innovation and Government Organization, other ministers of government, Ms. Francesca Patolizano, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordination and Interagency Affairs at UN DESA, Mr. Mario Cimoli, Deputy Executive Secretary at UN ECLAC, other heads and representatives of other international and regional institutions or organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all good afternoon. It is my distinct pleasure to formally welcome you on behalf of the Caribbean community to this timely and strategic webinar. At the outset, it is important to recognize that COVID-19 has not been a market disruptor in the region, but an accelerant for change. What would have taken years to accomplish is now occurring in a matter of months as the market dynamics have drastically changed, and survival necessitates agility and increased responsiveness to the needs of customers. This is largely being achieved through the adoption of new business models, which are driven by digital transformation. In effecting this transition, however, cognizance must now also be taken of demographic shifts whereby millennials and General Z now account for the bulk of the population, and what will be treated as a novelty for my generation is now a baseline expectation for those groupings. However, the youth also boast the highest rates of unemployment, but for them, this era in the region represents the greatest opportunity, as most have been exposed to at least some elements of technology and with training can be valuable contributors to the new normal. We are all mindful of the fact that technological progress can deliver rapid growth if it accelerates structural transformation. This is particularly germane at a time when productivity growth has slowed in many parts of the world. However, the skill-intensive nature of the transformation will necessitate shifting labor from low productivity activities to higher productivity activities, which will require complementary investments in education and training. This is particularly timely as across the region, employers identify inadequately skilled workers as a major constraint to their business. Indeed, in some countries, some 70% of the labor force has no certification. But the good news is that for the most part, they are trainable. The speed of technological progress is influenced by changes in demography, access to broadband, workforce skill levels, or the adequacy of social protection mechanisms for those who might be displaced. Hence, the rebalancing of technological dynamics that a modern economy demands, coupled with the attendant risk mitigation to minimize fallout, requires meaningful and widespread dialogue and the collective action of all stakeholders through well-structured public-private partnership mechanisms. It is anticipated that the transition to digital online platforms will create an additional fillip for regional GDP, given the positive spin-offs in terms of increased productivity, high labor market participation rates, with attendant increases in full-time employment. Nevertheless, we must remain cognizant of the fact that current inadequacies of broadband coverage will be a significant constraint in the pace of automation across the region. This is a matter which must be accorded the highest priority. Nonetheless, one of the positives that has emanated from the dislocations arising from the onset of COVID-19 pandemic on the region is the obvious growth in e-commerce. However, while that is encouraging news, the sad reality is that the principal beneficiaries of this surge in e-commerce has been the United States and China. Too few of our businesses have functional websites. Several have at best Facebook pages or a landing page. These static accounts add very little value, and therefore consumers have limited exposure to regional opportunities in electronic commerce. Another area of inadequacy is data collection and management. The transition to efficient digital innovations will be guided by optimized data mining strategies. However, in the context of eroded public confidence in data collecting organizations and data consuming technologies, there is uncertainty regarding the adequacy and flexibility of the current data governance frameworks in treating with privacy issues. This really highlights the need for lifelong training for those persons who will play an active role in the digital innovation and transformation processes, as they will have to be on the cutting edge of the technological advancement to respond with the requisite nimbleness that the new normal dictates. Now, the World Bank has indicated that the potential for automation in this region is about 60 to 70%. This therefore points to the immense opportunities that abound in this regional space. Some of the opportunities that we can quickly identify are collaborations in terms of innovation with labs, creation of tech parks and centers of excellence, building capacities within the countries, knowledge sharing consistent with what is applicable to the region, and guarding against cookie-cutter approaches, establishment of robust data governance frameworks, including ethical considerations and strengthening of the legislative base, transitioning a number of state services online, for example, passport applications and renewals, driver's license, tax payments, etc. There are opportunities to consolidate also a number of state agencies under a single location and minimize bureaucracy. At the sectoral level, there are opportunities for agricultural transformation, modernized services, including financial services, local content, for example, locally manufactured parts, export-led manufacturing infrastructure. In this regard, cognizance should be taken of the fact that new technologies will reduce information asymmetries, which will therefore prove to be invaluable, for example, in facilitating financial inclusion by providing access to finance for people without credit histories. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't go it alone, and we require partnerships with the multilateral community, as the absorptive capacity of our regional private sector would not be able to sustain the nature of the transformation required. These partnerships would not necessarily be limited to the provision of investment funds, but would include facilities for the provision of knowledge sharing and tools, development of platforms, and even facilitating country-specific research. With that, Madam Chair, I do yield, and I thank you for your time and attention. I do hope that we'll have a very productive engagement today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this opening remarks. We will now move to the panel discussion on the critical role of digital government in the Caribbean in the post-COVID-19 era, where we'll learn from different countries and regional organizations what their experiences are and their governance strategies to address COVID-19. Mr. Vincenzo Aguero, who is Chief Digital Government Branch, UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, will moderate this session. Vincenzo Aguero is responsible for the coordination of the United Nations e-Government Survey, which is produced every 2 years by the UN Department of Social and Economic Affairs. Vincenzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Veronique. Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends joining us virtually from around the world. As Chief of Digital Government, it is a great honor for me to be the moderator of this impressive session on the critical role of digital government in the Caribbean in the post-COVID-19 era. In the Digital Government Branch, we all believe the COVID-19 crisis is likely to significantly accelerate the shift to digital and fundamentally shake up the digital government landscape. As highlighted in the 2020 e-government survey, the COVID-19 pandemic forced governments and societies to turn forward digital technologies to respond to the crisis in the short run, recover from and resolve socioeconomic repercussions in the medium run, but also reinvent existing policies and develop new business models for service delivery in the long run. The COVID-19 crisis is setting the agenda and the priorities of where to focus on digital transformation efforts, such as facilitating the needs of people. Digital government has played a vital role in promoting the health and safety of people and in keeping economies and societies working during the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. Digital government present vast opportunities for Caribbean SIDS, and several Caribbean countries have digital transformation programs underway. However, although new online tools have become available in the context of the pandemic, governments need to minimize offline steps and adopt a digital by design approach that go beyond the digitalization of the existing processes, rethinking the whole organizational model to focus more on people and their needs, treating data as a strategic asset for service delivery and for decision making, and underpinning their organizations with secure, scalable, and resilient infrastructures and digital solutions. Caribbean countries in particular cannot mitigate the crisis and recover alone. National, regional, and local project-driven collaboration with the private sector, academia, civil society, and other stakeholders are necessary. Caribbean countries have to continue working with international and regional organizations to tackle common challenges to implementing digital technologies in support of the economic recovery of the region. We will discuss more of these topics with our distinguished speakers and experts. But before introducing the panel of the sessions, allow me to sharing a few insights and regional trends on digital transformation based on the 2020 e-government survey. Next slide, please. Globally, the 2020 survey highlights a persistent positive trends toward higher level of e-government development. At a glance, the 2020 survey reflects further improvement in global trends in e-government development and the transitioning of many countries from lower to higher AGDI. The global average AGDI continued to rise, reaching 0.6 in 2020 in comparison with 0.55 in 2018. 57 countries have a very high AGDI value in comparison with 40 countries in 2018. A total of 69 countries have high AGDI value and 59 countries have middle AGDI at global level. With 34 new entrants, 65% of member states are now in the high, very high AGDI group. This denotes a significant improvement in the level of e-government development around the world. In total, 42 countries recorded positive upward movement from lower AGDI group to the higher AGDI. The top e-government countries, those in the highest rating class, are Denmark, Republic of Korea, Estonia, Finland, Australia, Sweden, United Kingdom, New Zealand, United States of America, Netherlands, Singapore, Ireland, Norway, and Japan. Denmark is leading the global AGDI ranking, and Korea is leading the online service provision. And Estonia has the most significant action since 2018. Next slide. In terms of government development, the LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS as a group have increased their average AGDI by 33% since 2016, which is higher than the average global increase of AGDI during the same period. Among these three special groups, the LDCs have made the most progress since 2016, increasing their average AGDI by around 44%. But despite this progress, LDCs have the lowest average among the three special groups, followed by SIDS and LLDCs. All of the three groups have average value below the global average. However, there are important variances in distinct subgroups. When the least developed countries are excluded from the list of SIDS and LLDCs, the average AGDI value for the latter two groups are higher. This gap points to persist challenges that continue to undermine the efforts for development of the countries in special groups. Similarly, for SIDS, if we exclude the very high AGDI leading countries, Singapore and Bahrain, the 19 remaining are all in the high AGDI group, with an average AGDI that is below the global average. It is important to highlight that the Caribbean SIDS perform better than the Asian Pacific SIDS. Next slide. The average of the AGDI value for the 16 CARICOM UN member states is 0.57, which is below the global average value. Nevertheless, 10 of 16 of these CARICOM members have improved their overall AGDI value during the last 2 years, even if the overall AGDI ranking position among 193 member states in 2020 may have declined. Hence, it is important to analyze the survey findings in the context of overall e-government development globally. The lower right and the figure on the slide illustrated that the human capital in the region allows for faster e-government development, but poorly developed infrastructure continue to hinder the progress. The data suggests that the challenges persist in the region and continue to undermine the efforts of SIDS to improve the telecommunication infrastructure, online service provision, and human capital development. So we will discuss about this and more with our distinguished panelists. The panel today comprises the following distinguished members. We have Mr. Nigel Casimir, Acting Secretary General, Caribbean Telecommunication Union. We have Ms. Jennifer Britton, Deputy Program Manager, ICT for Development, Caribbean Community, CARICOM Secretariat. We have Mrs. Teresa Wankin, Secretary General, Canto Caribbean. We have Ms. Carol Roach, Acting Director, Department of Transformation and Digitalization, Government of the Bahamas. We have Mr. Devon Rowe, Executive Director, Caribbean Center for Development Administration and member of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration. We also have Dr. Spencer Thomas, Chairman, Board of Commissioners of the National Telecommunication Regulatory Commission of Grenada. And last but not least, we have Kirk Henry, Chief Executive Officer, National Information Communication Technology Company. So it's a fantastic panel. Could I remind all panelists to try to limit their presentation to 7 minutes to that we have enough time so to left the interactive session. So my first speaker will be Mr. Nigel Casimir, Acting Secretary General, Caribbean Telecommunication Union. For you, Mr. Casimir, we would appreciate if you could share initiatives, including the 21st Century Government Project, with the CTU, which CTU has planned to support governments of the region and which will support the single ICT space and the post-COVID-19 necessities. The floor is yours, Mr. Casimir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Honorable Prime Minister of Aruba, other excellencies, other ministers participating, senior execs of the UN DESA, UN ECLAC, and CARICOM, heads of other regional organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We are quite pleased here at the CTU to be participating in this webinar. And we often take opportunities to collaborate with each of the other main organizers here. And it's wonderful to be here. As regards the CTU, just to give a little background, we are a Caribbean regional intergovernmental organization. We advise our member governments on telecoms and ICT policy and regulatory matters. We've been doing this for about the last 31 years, having been established in 1989. We have like 20 member countries and territories of the Caribbean as members of the CTU. We are an institution of CARICOM. And basically, we facilitate policy harmonization, regional policy harmonization. We coordinate regional projects. We advise. We contribute to capacity development, and we advocate and represent Caribbean positions in international fora. Just to give some recent context to digital government in the Caribbean and the work of the CTU in this area, I'll just go back only to 2017 and say that in February of 2017, the Caribbean heads of government approved a document which is called the Vision and Roadmap for the Caribbean Single ICT Space. That has already been mentioned a couple of times by some speakers before me. Just to describe what our concept is, it's an ICT-enabled borderless space that fosters economic and social and cultural integration for the betterment of Caribbean citizens. People also look at it as the digital layer of the Caribbean single market and economy. That's another overarching objective of the Caribbean community. So the single ICT space was seen as what is the technology layer that could enable us to achieve the goals of the single market and economy. So that was 2017, and the various CARICOM institutions that would be associated with implementing that vision and roadmap kind of pretty much set to work. As far as the CTU is concerned, in 2018, in January 2018 actually, we specifically launched something we call the 21st Century Government Initiative. From our point of view, we've heard and been pursuing for probably 15 to 20 years e-government. And different countries had reached different stages of success in their e-government thrusts. One key aspect that we noticed, however, was that it was very much focused on specific services, automating specific government services to the public. And it usually manifested itself as different ministries offering their specific services to government, pretty much in their own silo. So one government might have multiple ministries doing different, not necessarily well-coordinated initiatives to provide government services, their specific government services to citizens. And introducing this concept of 21st century government, we felt that the old approach to e-government wasn't really working optimally. So we looked at this as a citizen-centric, seamless way of delivering government services to citizens. So yes, you are using the electronic technology, but the organization of it is from a whole of government approach. You're breaking down those ministerial silos. You are causing the overall government to work more seamlessly, to share data, to share resources, and so on. And all with a view from, with a perspective that is citizen-centric. You are organizing it to deliver the best value to citizens, as opposed to having an internal operational focus. So we launched the 21st Century Government Initiative in early 2018. And we had actually had an event where we had a summit and so on. We did get some consultancy assistance with that. Well, I've described the difference between the 21st century government and the former e-government. So for the rest of 2018, we really went in pursuit of doing that. And for 2018 and 2019, what followed was individual national efforts to start adopting and pursuing the 21st century government concept. However, the national efforts were still somewhat asynchronous in the sense that different of our member states were at different stages of development and were at different stages of readiness and all of that. So the CTU took a position of trying to foster regional collaboration to gain whatever synergies we could get to better coordinate the efforts to ensure whatever is implemented would remain interoperable throughout the region, and that we could also take examples of or take opportunities for establishing any common platforms that we might have. For example, we continued, and some of the initiatives that we applied to doing this are our Spectrum Management Task Force, our Caribbean Spectrum Management Task Force, where we get multiple countries working together. We also have a forum on internet governance where we try to harmonize internet governance policies. And we also coordinated several regional projects, one in spectrum management, one on infrastructure, which was called CARICOM, the Caribbean Regional Communications Infrastructure Program. We assisted multiple governments with building up their national infrastructure, their government wide area networks and so on. And we also assisted governments with national ICT planning. So that is 2018, 2019, and we were making progress. 2020 introduced the new variable, COVID-19. So COVID-19 arrived in a context where efforts were already somewhat in train. But what it has done, as was previously mentioned, is that it has renewed the priority on digitalization. It has strengthened it, it has accelerated it. So it's caused demand spikes in terms of use of ICT. It's causing new challenges or amendments to existing challenges. So with this greater influence on digitalization, the CTU, I would say, slightly adjusted its strategic focus during the course of this year. Interestingly, we had presented to our Executive Council a new strategic plan in March of this year. And just yesterday, that plan was approved by our General Conference of Ministers. And it has two main thrusts. One is 21st century government, and the other is national digital transformation. So I would say from that point of view, that's some of what we've done. And we also will be continuing to pursue our collaborations and partnerships, notably in terms of digital government with CARICOM and with our member states with respect to 21st century government. So I can pause at this point and pursue any further questions that arise. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. So I would like to now give the floor to Ms. Jennifer Britton, Deputy Program Manager, ICT for Development from the Caribbean Community, CARICOM Secretariat. Ms. Britton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to just acknowledge distinguished persons who spoke in the opening session, the Prime Minister of Aruba, other ministers, ASGs, and other executive officers from UN ECLAC, CARICOM, and UN DESA. Can you still hear me? Wonderful. Okay. Mr. Moderator, you didn't actually ask me a question, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask me what you would like the audience to hear.
Yes, you are right. Sorry, I was rushing and I made the question. So, Ms. Britton, could you expand on what CARICOM states are doing in the e-learning space, the need to tackle the widening digital divide for learners and challenges presented by distance learning in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic? Please, and in addition, you may want to address the digital transformation imperative post-COVID-19. Thank you, Ms. Britton. The floor is back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think I'd start with the second part of your question first, because that lays the basis for everything we're doing this afternoon and for the future. Thankfully, the distinguished gentleman from UN ECLAC put the single ICT space squarely in our conversation, and that is the region's major input and answer to digital transformation efforts, and allows us the opportunity to coordinate and resonate all of our challenges and solutions under that and in that space. Having said that, the COVID-19 really put a lot of public attention starting from probably January of this year. In the context of the planning of the region, I've always been aware of some of the, as one of the reasons for developing the single ICT space vision, for harmonizing and pulling some of the issues together. At the basic level, people, I think everybody in the world now wants to be able to access basic services. And so it continues to keep the conversation with regard to what we want to do in digital transformation in the region alive. As the rest of the SIDS and LDCs in the world have experienced, in particular in this region, several of our sectors, almost all of them, have been identified as needing to be recovered quickly, and we hope that that recovery can be aided by the digital technologies. But tourism, education, health, agriculture, employment, labor, even government itself has been provided with an opportunity to, I think, scrutinize its operations and to rebuild in a more inclusive way, to forge cooperation and to answer the call, which was, I think, recent from the UN Secretary General about institutional retooling, because a number of our governments were not able to continue work as normal in the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown time. Also, I think the IT and digital sector is one which has been affected, and I guess history will tell whether it was affected positively or negatively. But in the midst of that sector, as well as we use it for transforming and fixing the other sectors, there are some fixes that need to be addressed very quickly in that sector. And one of them which jumps out at me is the infrastructure and connectivity issues in our region, which still beset us and which will continue to be priority as we continue to move forward. That perhaps takes me a little better into talk about e-learning. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I think that the disruption in education was quite forward-facing. I think everybody has had an education story, and so e-learning has emerged as one of the solutions for what is happening in education. Our ministers of education have met, as all the other ministers in the other sectors I mentioned, and are working assiduously towards plans which will take us beyond COVID-19 and perhaps into the next 5 years and decade. But the challenge what I would call a delicious challenge is the fact that we've now realized in our region and the rest of the world, I suppose, that a couple of things. Our education sectors are competing with big behemoth educators in the world because everybody has put their courses online. We have been the recipient and continue, I hope, into the next couple of years to be the recipient of some targeted online courses which we are able to access almost for free, or in some instances for free. And I hope that we will continue to develop that relationship so that we can continue to roll out e-learning. The bigger exciting picture for me is that we have now expanded what I would call our learner base, because in government, in private sector, and in civil society, all of us now need digital skills and different competencies to move forward if we were to have, which we're probably going to have, a second and a third phase of the COVID-19 pandemic. In any case, we were all going to be having to be re-equipped with digital skills in the region. And so the COVID-19 has presented itself as a tragic enabler, if I could say that, in terms of how we move forward with education and our e-learning issues. But e-learning is now going to be spread across private sector, public sector, and civil society. And so it gives us an opportunity to really work on digital skills as a comprehensive whole as part of the single ICT space, and also to ensure that we extend education and learning across the region in that way. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Britton, for your very interesting presentations. And I also really like what you said about the skills, and also I will use the term about when you said the enabler, that the COVID-19 is you use the word I don't know, terrific enable or something like that, but that is very tragic. Sorry. Tragic enable. Yeah. That is absolutely right. But yeah, so thank you for that. I will now give the floor to Mrs. Teresa Wankin, who is the Secretary General of Canto Caribbean. Since Canto does a lot of work to bring different countries and telecom operators in the region on digital transformation project, which is crucial for the development of ICT infrastructures in the Caribbean, could you elaborate on financing partnership and tools for ICT infrastructures as part of the COVID-19 recovery plan? Mrs. Britton, Mrs. Wankin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the panelists, the other panelists, Honorable Prime Minister, and other distinguished speakers in the opening ceremony. I have a very short presentation which I will share with the audience. If you give me okay, there we go. So I would talk about leveraging digital government and spearheading innovative solutions to address COVID-19 in the Caribbean. And I am from Canto, and Canto is the Association of Network Operators and Service Providers in the region. COVID-19, as the speaker before me said, it's an opportunity and as well as a challenge. And there are some key learning things that we can take forward to better equip the region, to enhance our digitalization agenda, and also to prepare ourselves for other pandemics or any other unfortunate incidents. So getting the digitalization agenda right will obviously lead to smart technology and connected systems, economic growth and development, better lives for all citizens, and efficiencies in dealing with future pandemics and national disasters. Now, there are some critical success factors that we must look at if we look at investment alliances in the private sector with public partnerships with governments. So we have first, modernization of the public sector, strengthening of the legal and regulatory framework, creation of a digital toolkit, and human capacity development, and creation a culture of innovation and growth in the region. And in short, for modernization of the public sector, ensuring that all government services are easily accessible and by all citizens. And this can only be done if we have a managed roadmap with the facets and the tenants of the single ICT space and the 21st century government that the two speakers referred to before my presentation. The strengthening of the legal and regulatory framework. There must be dialogue and cooperation between all stakeholders. There must be public-private partnerships. Promote the growth and development of a robust ICT ecosystem, enable changes necessary to facilitate mobile operators to ensure investments that will continue to ensure investment and increase connectivities to all. And some of the tools that this can be done by is not only in the telecom sector, but in all other sectors, tax holidays, access to universal service funds to increase penetration in rural and underserved areas. Creation of a digitalization toolkit. This is something that this region is very, very talented. And I mean, if you look at success stories from Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, Barbados, you will see there are very many of those but they're also being done in silos. And a digitalization toolkit for the region will help to break down some of those silos. And I wouldn't go into all of the examples here, but we have good success stories. We have Smart Term in Jamaica. We have Giga in the OECD state countries, and Edmundo, of course, which is universal, and Flow Study. These things can be quickly replicated throughout the region. And if we have information in one central place, then it becomes easier for synergies and knowledge to be shared between the small island developing states, as well as climate e-commerce applications, the success stories, of course, their health tracking apps, their climate. Every sector you go, there's a digitalization agenda on. And for our region to be successful, we have to harness it in a collaborative way that we can bring all the stakeholders together. Another area is human capacity development, public education, awareness, skills, and training. That is necessary. And Ms. Britton mentioned it in her presentation a short while ago. There's a whole lot of new skills to be had in digitalization, the whole ecosystem, from application development, IoT services, blockchain, engaging the youth to ensure that they are part of the process going forward, and innovative centers of excellence, incubators. Nigel would have spoken about that. Creating a culture of innovation and support for local governments, visualizing innovation as a pillar. Sometimes countries has innovation and technology lumped with another ministry, but COVID have taught us that there must be emphasis and there must be political will, there must be will from the private sector, there must be will from the regulatory agencies to ensure that we have this innovation culture in the region. My last slide speaks to a whole new ecosystem where we can even have the next game changer from the Caribbean island to address specifically some financing initiatives. There are several initiatives, there are several ways in public-private partnership that private sector and governments can work together to enhance existing infrastructure and also build new infrastructure. I didn't refer to this here, but there is a project with Microsoft and the government of Korea where they are doing public-private partnerships to ensure that all innovation studies, all innovation opportunities are controlled in one area and dispersed throughout the region so that citizens will benefit, businesses will benefit, as well as the government will ultimately benefit by having access for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Wankin. Many thanks for your presentation and for your insight. And now our fourth panelist is Mr. Carol Roach, Acting Director, Department of Transformation and Digitalization, Government of the Bahrain. Mrs. Roach, as you represent government from a multi-island state like the Bahamas, as an archipelago of over 700 islands, could you address the special challenges and opportunities for developing digital government in the Bahamas? Mrs. Carol Roach, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, we all realize that the pandemic environment has created a new norm and has placed a strong focus on all things digital. The challenges in the public sector are also faced in the public sector faced in the private sector. For government, there is both digitalization and digitization. And there's a very subtle distinguishing between them. The first is making use of digital technology to change the business model and how we deliver value. While digitization is more of a focus on document capture and scanning and making a business process more electronic and automated. The pandemic challenged us and gave us an opportunity to explore and implement digital technologies to provide solutions in a short term while keeping digitization in view for medium and long-term deliverables. So challenges: how to keep everyone connected and providing services, how to keep in touch with employees and customers, but remotely, how to continue providing services, but remotely. The problem is that we are chained to the brick and mortar structure we call the office. The chains that tightly bind us are paper and filing cabinets and the traditional telephone lines. I went to a private establishment just before our second national lockdown and saw staff wheeling boxes of files to their car on their office chairs. Government would have needed a moving van for each person to do this. Paper and filing cabinets require digitization, but we needed some now solutions. Another challenge: how to provide basic supplies for everyday existence. Most Caribbean economies are tourist-based, and we have taken a hard hit with the domino effect on other businesses. Besides getting people back to work, governments still need to ensure that the basic needs of citizens and residents were met. They needed food and shelter. Measures, new and existing, had to be accessible, and the measure dispersed or delivered under the new health protocols of COVID-19, which meant that physical offices were not always available. So here's the opportunities. Immediate solution: we had to turn to use of low-tech and pre-existing no-code technology solutions. Big tech solutions like digitization require big funding and takes months to plan, implement, train, and deploy. The beginning of the pandemic allowed only for a few days, in some instances, hours to put things in place. The most critical step was to first identify the critical services and identify the essential resources to perform them. I suppose if people had their business continuity plan, that was really BCP 101. Equipment: mobile phones, MiFis, which are these little personal Wi-Fi devices, and laptops. We had to make sure that we could get our hands on it, and the entire country was trying to get their hands on these things. So there was a challenge with procurement. Desk lines were redirected to mobile phones, which was a huge advantage and success. And because it was so successful, we continue to do it to date. Mobile phones are versatile. They've become scanners for office use, access email, join online meetings wherever you are, and also for signing documents. One thing with the signing of documents, last year we started a project where we identified key persons who had the responsibility for approvals, and we actually went through a training for signing PDF documents. So this was very handy in the pandemic environment. People knew how to do those, so it wasn't so difficult to get done. Connectivity: we created accounts for persons to access government network so that they could access files and servers and different information systems. Access to information services request: use of websites, fillable forms, and dedicated email accounts for a service. Now, a lot of government agencies tend to not distribute email accounts. There's a cost associated with it, but we found that it has become a must-have tool for persons. So persons were assigned to process dedicated email accounts. We have an agency that said that their customers are loving the communication between to a dedicated email group or service, and they have decided that they're going to keep it on. Low code or no code software solutions such as Microsoft SharePoint. A lot of country governments have SharePoint in their arsenal, and I think we need to make more use of it. So we had a lot of SharePoint solutions that allowed service-related data and documents to be captured, shared, and collaborated on. We had the Health COVID-19 call center, the Health COVID-19 contact tracing, the syndromic surveillance for sentinel sites, to track COVID-19 risk assessment information. Our tenders board is now scheduling and tracking systems using SharePoint. Department of Social Services shelter management application is also in SharePoint. So no digitization, only a lot of digital technologies that we already had in our arsenal. Regrettably, there was no quick and ready solutions for delivery or fulfillment of goods. So in the initial stages, we still had to figure out how to do that. So short-term opportunity. The beauty of technology solutions is that the country's physical archipelago now becomes a single virtual country, no physical boundaries. So we had to untether from the landlines by using virtual call centers. We had to untether from the boardroom by investing in online meeting platforms. We untethered from the brick and mortar by investing in a web training platform for public consultations, town hall meetings, symposiums. And then we started to fast track existing projects that we had, especially the safety protection management information system. New services, of course, a lot of the countries are now looking at creating a health travel visa, which the government of the Bahamas did, and we're going on to version 2.2. So the landscape has changed. So we've had to change from digital being a nice to have to a must have. So it's quite an advantage for us, though a tragic one. So don't overly, my advice is don't overly focus on your digitization projects, but look at your digital arsenal and make use of them. I would like to thank our Prime Minister Hubert Minnis, who has been ever so supportive, and he has meetings with the stakeholders to make sure that things are moving forward. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share what we've been doing in the Bahamas and our archipelago.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roach, for answering my question and sharing the very good experience from the Bahamas. I also like what you said about moving from nice to have to must to have. I think it is a very good slogan. So I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Devon Rowe, Executive Director, Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICOM, and member of the United Nations Committee of Experts on Public Administration. Mr. Rowe, could you share your views, also based on your expertise and experience as a SEPA member, on what are the challenges and opportunities to transition to digital government in the countries in CARICOM? We would welcome if you could elaborate on the assistance needed. Mr. Rowe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And let me take a second or so to recognize Prime Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and many thanks again for the invitation to contribute to this session. CARICOM's mandate is to improve administrative capabilities of the public sector in our member states to support the acceleration of economic and social transformation. And COVID-19 has certainly pointed to the need for that transformation. But first of all, let me begin by indicating, next slide, that CARICOM utilizes the Caribbean Public Service Charter as the conceptual framework for the execution of its work. This charter was endorsed by ministers of the public service in 2017. And that's Minister of Public Service across the CARICOM member states. The expectation is that it will establish a common framework for the delivery of public services in all our member states and serve as a catalyst for reform and modernization. In fact, in looking at the charter, there are several pillars on which the charter stands. Governance standards, capacity, accountability, openness, legislation, and it is aimed at delivering a citizen-oriented public service. which is responsive, resilient, and sustainable. We expect that in executing this charter, no pillar will stand alone. Instead, the activities of all the pillars are interwoven. We expect also too that the charter should help to foster collaboration of subscribing states in modernizing administration and strengthening institutional capabilities. Next slide. I want to talk very quickly about 21st century public service, which is very much aligned to 21st century government created by the CTU. And we are looking at a public service that is citizen-centric, outcome-focused, and that is this is a very important point for us, that we're not focused on process, but focused on outcomes. It must be talent managed. We must have the capabilities that we require to execute as government. And we believe as well too that digital government is a critical component, so we must be technologically innovative and data-driven. I apologize if I repeat any of the comments made before, but it points to the coordination, it points to the direction of all efforts towards common objectives. We think that, as well to at CARICOM, we think that achieving the objective of 21st century government would mean that during normal and challenging times, the new resilient public service would be capable to deliver services to citizens in a cost-effective, timely, and convenient manner. We believe that digital government is an essential component for execution. Next slide, please. In our work, next slide. In our work, we have recognized that part of the challenge that Caribbean countries have faced in implementation is associated with the alignment of the national vision to the role and capabilities of the public service. It is also associated with the development of transformation strategies, ensuring resource availability to move beyond talk, to ensure coordination and leadership from the executive and administrative arms of government, and also to ensuring that appropriate skills are in place. This schema that you're looking at, which you may or may not be able to see, was extracted from work and research that we have done at CARICOM. And the many pieces here indicate that there are many parts, many moving parts, which must be managed. And as a result of which, those managing it must have the skills and capabilities required. And I'm going to end the presentation here. These are just some slides I wanted to show very quickly, because I wanted to move on to the other part of the question, which deals with challenges. And if we were to go back and look at the success of public sector transformation across our region over the last 25 years, we have also extracted some observations, and amongst them are that transformation was sometimes treated as a single goal, either better customer service or right sizing. And with the communication about right sizing, about reducing numbers, many times it was associated with fiscal imperatives and not efficiency imperatives, as a result of which the public sector numbers, which may have been reduced, bounced back over time to previous levels. There was also seen to be inadequate communication, that we were asking public servants in an environment of reducing the size of the public service to essentially oversee their own demise, which of course led to resistance and also less than adequate delivery. There's been a difficulty in implementation, and it has led to the often described implementation deficit. where far less has been achieved than expected or announced. Public sector transformation units we also discovered were also inadequately structured and resourced. They lack the authority and the influence to institutionalize organizational and culture change. A big challenge, which has already been mentioned, but I think bears repeating, is that there's a need to focus on digital infrastructure. There are opportunities, because even before COVID-19 began, the Conference of the Heads of Government mandated the full adoption of RBM. And since then, work has been taking place to further push the implementation of RBM. We believe that part of the assistance required is capacity development in the areas of change management, business process reviews, strengthening the center of government, strengthening role of government planning, also further expanding results-based management. And we also have come to the conclusion as well too, that ministers who are ultimately responsible and accountable must stay abreast of developments in this extremely dynamic environment. However, frequently interventions have usually stopped at the level of the permanent secretary. Development interventions have really stopped at the level of permanent secretaries. And for this reason, CARICOM is working in conjunction with the University of the West Indies to develop a program to secure ministerial excellence, because we believe ministers also need to be supported in the work that they are doing. And if there is anything to go by, it is this, that in Jamaica in 2018, CARICOM would have conducted training for parliamentarians. It was well received, and they have actually shown their leadership that they do not believe that any category is beyond preparation in this new environment that we're living in. And with that, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to stop here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rowe, for excellent presentation, and also for the contribution that you as expert in SEPA are giving to us. Thanks a lot. So let me now introduce Dr. Spencer Thomas, Chairman, Board of Commissioners for the National Telecommunication Regulatory Commissions of Grenada. Mr. Thomas, with Grenada having the lead responsibility for science and technology, including ICT, in the CARICOM region, could you share what is the experience? What are the issues and plans of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States? And if you want also to elaborate on the experience with the Caribbean Digital Transformation Program. Mr. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good afternoon to everyone. Let me stand on the protocol established already and recognize the Minister and other dignitaries. I also would like to bring greetings from the Permanent Secretary of ICT in Grenada, in whose honor I am making this presentation, and to speak on the OECS experience. To do so, I want to take you back to 20 years ago with the formation of the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority. Being the regulator on the panel, I think I would like to take a regulatory position on this. Of course, we know that ECTEL has been a global example, being one of the only multi-country regulatory regime around, which has tremendous experience over the last 20 years. We thought that 20 years ago, we were at a critical juncture in the development of the region. Telecommunications reform was the buzzword at that time. Had to do with economic diversification and economic reform. I want to argue that today we are at a similar critical juncture. Not now telecommunications, but we are on the digital transformation era. So now I would like to argue that the same aggression that we had, the same agility the same revolutionary spirit that we had, the determination and the collective action that we had 20 years ago at the OECS is the same that is required now in this new dispensation. 20 years ago, we worked across the OECS sub-region, the 5 countries that now form ECTEL. I want to argue also that we now need to take a wider approach, and many have already mentioned the issue of CARICOM single space and economy. I think that is where we need to go, a wider space. 20 years ago, we looked at telecommunications. Today, we need to look at electronic communications at a different scope. We spoke then, 20 years ago, about common policy framework for telecommunications. We spoke then about investment strategy for telecommunications, the single regulatory regime, ECTEL, for telecommunications, HR issues, employment issues. Critical among those things then was the harmonized policy framework and legislative framework across all of the countries. Fiscal coordination also was part of the debate then. But most importantly, as I said, by treaty, the sovereignty of some of those countries by treaty was subjugated by the countries themselves. And that was critical. Today, we are in a different environment, as I said. Now, I think for the way the regulatory services are concerned in the region, we need to look at a new regulatory package. Maybe something like a regulatory reset, for the want of a better word. We need to reboot the regulatory system. Given the whole question of IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, 5G, all of those issues, even COVID, I think it requires a real look at the regulatory situation, the data and the evidence that is required. So I think the regulatory package must include a broader regional approach. It must encompass new thinking. In fact, ICT, the regulatory regime must be ICT proof or technology proof. I think it is important. We need to look at electronic data management that has already been talked about, and protection, security, cyber security, local content development, and even beyond that, basically development of software and hardware locally. Also, that is part of it. Digital literacy and digital payments. This is a new environment. So that regulatory regime has to reset to fit that new environment. On the second question that you raised with respect to the experience with the project, I must tell you that the Telecoms Reform Project of 1996 to 2001, thereabout, from the World Bank, was the genesis at the time in terms of the OECS and the creation of ECTEL. At that point in time, in 1996, the issue was economic diversification, which the World Bank supported. We then moved on to the whole question of EGRIP, another project again, which dealt specifically with electronic legislation for e-crime, e-evidence, filing, transactions, funds transfer, multipurpose ID. All of these were done under another project from the World Bank. And then we moved on to a 2012-2020 project from the World Bank, the CACIP, which have already been mentioned by Nigel, which spoke to specifically to the infrastructure, broadband networks and services, connectivity infrastructure, innovation, and so on. And now we are in this new environment. Again, we're looking at the whole question of the Caribbean Digital Program, DG for Resilience, where we're looking at smarter, resilient government, enabling environment development, digital technologies, leveraging institutional strengthening, and so on. So the question here is to the experience that we have, that it is a long haul over a long time. The focus must be on the technology and the critical interventions of the World Bank to help us to move to this particular level now was very critical. So I want to stop here.
Dr. Spencer. Very interesting what you said. And
Okay, I think we've lost Vincenzo.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, we lost you. Yes, go ahead.
So I give now the floor to the last speaker, is Mr. is the Chief Executive Officer of the National Information Communication Technology Company from Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Henry, what initiatives has Trinidad and Tobago as a twin island republic undertaken or is undertaking to create an agenda, including to take service to the people? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Let me just start off by recognizing the Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies from the UN, esteemed panelists, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We are very grateful to be afforded the opportunity to share some of our experiences as an implementer in the Caribbean region as we transition to a more digital-focused region. So I just want to start by giving a brief overview of iGovTT. As I said earlier, iGovTT, we have the perspective of an implementer. So we take the policy coming down from CARICOM to the regional bodies, and that translates or impacts on national strategy. And we are primarily charged with implementation. So at iGov, we support the work of the Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. So I want to focus a bit on the first part of the question, which speaks to the creation of an agile e-government. Now, that is a very loaded question. Agility has often been the holy grail of IT organizations, enterprises, and I dare say governments. But for us, our experience tells us that it starts with the ability to translate the policy intent of the government into the day-to-day operational activity in various ministries, departments, and agencies. So for us, a critical focus, an important focus, which is amplified during these pandemic times, is the need to ensure that we have an appropriate governance of enterprise IT structure that will facilitate this across the public sector. This would allow for the strategy to be transmitted down throughout the public sector to create those services which we want to make available to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So I want to get a bit more specific. We see the pandemic in particular as an amplifier. Those IT technologies, systems, subsystems that didn't exist or did exist prior to the pandemic, the absence of presence is amplified in terms of the impact to our ability to deliver. I just want to set the stage a bit. In Trinidad and Tobago, we are guided by a national ICT strategic plan that was laid out by the Ministry of Public Admin and Digital Transformation. And it's basically 5 pillars. It speaks to improving connectivity, increasing human capacity, digital government, fostering economic development, and advancing the environment for societal benefit. So what we have done in Trinidad and Tobago, across here at the National ICT Company Limited, at the onset of the pandemic, while we were focusing on the use of e-payments, we were able to quickly roll that out and make that available, particularly at the, for example, at the Ministry of the Attorney General Office. Now, what that meant, during a pandemic when we are meant to maintain social distance, we were able to introduce that so that we reduce the risk of citizens making requests for services at that ministry, thus reducing the likelihood of transmission of the virus. We also took a focus on enterprise collaboration technologies. We rolled that out across a host of ministries to facilitate remote work, because just like the rest of the world, we were impacted and had to practice work from home. And we felt that it was extremely important to maintain some level of productivity, and we had to find the tools to ensure that our workforce was able to continue to be productive. During the period, we also made use of the communication technology made possible by the use of bots. So we would have introduced what we call an omni-channel approach to communication, so that during the period when people were forced to work from home, citizens were still able to communicate with various ministries and departments through the use of the electronic channels. And after hours, we provided the capability through the use of those bots for automated responses to citizen requests, queries for information. Now, we are in a pandemic, and we feel that in the short to medium term, we must focus on increasing the footprint of payments. And when I say payments, I mean online payments. So we are focused on rolling out implementations at various ministries. We see the use of online case management, particularly to assist with the socially disadvantaged, because as you know, the economic dislocation that resulted from the pandemic continues. And the ability to interact with citizens in an online fashion, to capture their information, to process their requests, and ultimately to treat with them via the social safety net that exists in Trinidad is paramount for us. So from where we sit, those are the key technologies we feel that we must roll out and continue to roll out in ministries. Indeed, we feel that it is imperative that we increase the velocity of rollout. And alongside that, I heard panelists mention earlier the whole notion of interoperability. As we roll out these solutions and mature the online presence of services that are provided by ministries, it gives us the opportunity to fine-tune the underlying systems that support these e-services, so that as we move out of the pandemic, this whole notion of being able to integrate services and to provide interoperable services will take increasing prominence. Overall, I think, the pandemic, one of the panelists before me said it represented a tragedy. And we see it as a tragedy that has presented us with opportunities. It has forced us to look inward, to increase the rate of adoption of technologies which have been around for a while. And it has also forced us to look or to rethink the way we see work and what work is. The notion of working in an office, of being physically present, has to be reconsidered. And we had to deal with some of those issues. At the onset of the pandemic, the technology also allowed us to roll out enterprise collaboration that allowed for our leadership, our Prime Minister and the Cabinet, to continue to operate in a remote fashion. So again, the COVID, while is a challenge to our region on many levels, we see IT and the attendant solutions as an opportunity to catapult the region forward. And we hope that as we move from the survive phase to the adapt phase, as we move out of the pandemic, we want to thrive in this environment, and we see the use of ICT and the related technologies as a critical pillar in moving us in that direction. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. So with this, I will give the floor to Madame Veronique for Q&A. I am really very pleased and very impressed by all the presenters, by their presentations and insights. I'm leaving this webinar with a lot. So I really thank you so much for joining us and participating on this. But I know that also all the other participants have a lot of questions. And so I will not try to summarize or highlight the main points because it's really impossible, but we have our assistants that are taking note, and we will come with an outcome documents of these webinars, and we will continue to discuss with all of you. So, and thank you again.
Thank you, Vincenzo. We have heard some very interesting perspectives from national governments and regional organizations on digital transformation, and including the challenges related to public sector transformation in light of COVID-19, amongst others from Mr. Davin Rowe. I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their concrete and especially forward-looking experiences and plans. We now have approximately 40 minutes left for some Q&A, for some questions. And I would like to start with a question for Grenada. The issue of regulation has been brought up by, of course, by Grenada, and also as a critical success factor by Mrs. Wankin. One of the questions of the participants is, as regulation clearly plays a very important role in providing direction to the private sector in telecommunication, where, in your opinion, is there additional scope for the private sector to step up its role in digital communications, and how should government use its powers to encourage the private sector in this direction? So if Dr. Spencer Thomas could respond to that question.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for this question. I think I will go back to the issue of the regulatory package, and I think one of the critical elements will be regulatory certainty. Of course, I know Teresa will be happy to hear that. I think it is important also that we at every juncture do what we call regulatory impact assessments across to see exactly what is happening to the regulatory decisions that we take. We need, of course, to have consistency in the decision-making space. Also, that regulator, that new regulator for that regime must be providing an enabling environment. The issue of spectrum management, for instance, the issue of looking at incentives, building capacity, and the whole question of creating that innovative culture, that regulatory regime must be part of that issue. It also, we must look at what type of regulations are we talking about. The buzz is now that we need to look at the lighter touch regulatory environment. But of course, collaborative approaches and the voice of the private sector must be part of that collaborative approach, that inclusiveness. And so here we are talking not only about operators in the traditional sense, but all entrepreneurs in the ICT space must be part of that equation. So I agree with Nigel. We need to look at the whole of government approach, but I want to also argue that we need to look at the whole of economy approaches, bringing everyone, the private sector, in that knowledge society that we are trying to create. It cannot be a knowledge society for the government as a whole, but it has to be a knowledge society for the economy as a whole. So the question of the technology that we're talking about now must be an enabler for that. The technology is not technology for technology itself, but technology for that digital economy, which must be characterized by efficiency, high levels of security, growth and development. It must be solving problems, and it must address the needs and the livelihoods of the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would want to provide further comments with regards to the regulatory framework? Otherwise, I would move on to the next question. So if somebody else in the panel would like to respond. No, okay. Let me move on to a question for the Bahamas. For the Bahamas, based on your experience, who should make up the stakeholder group in government in the implementation of actions in response to the pandemic? Ms. Roach?
Yes, it's quite a wide range, I think, of persons. Definitely the Ministry of Finance, not only because of budgeting, but also because they're mainly responsible for revenue collection. One of the things that we are exploring is the use of payment service providers. And they've been very key with regards to piloting these type of involvements with the digital wallet. Office of the Attorney General for legal framework, as well as contract negotiations. I'm sure a lot of people, because of the time it takes to negotiate a contract, sometimes ICT projects take very long to move. Office of the Data Commissioner, I heard one of the panelists earlier talk about data privacy. This is so key and critical, especially when people are tempted to go directly to cloud solutions because they're quicker to implement. But we have to be very aware of data privacy and data protection. The Office of the Prime Minister, ultimately, they're responsible for policies and directives. And it's very important to be seen that it's coming from the top. Another panelist said that as well, you need the executive support. And that's why I had to put in a plug for my Prime Minister, because we are getting that here. Ministry of Health, of course, response and the protocols that really guide a lot of the rules that we have to implement into our technology today. Ministry of Tourism, a lot of the economies for SIDS are tourist driven. So they have to be involved. They're the eyes and the ears of the industry. Finally, private sector, public sector stakeholders need to be involved. We've actually formed a committee here in the Bahamas. So I think the chair and the vice chair should be part of stakeholders that will action or respond to actions here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Kirk Henry referred to service delivery, the importance of continuing service delivery during the pandemic. One of the questions of the participants is which strategy should be developed to ensure transparency in service delivery during the pandemic? Mr. Kirk Henry.
No, that is a very good question, and it's one that presents itself even during non-pandemic times. From a service delivery perspective, we need to look at the heightened activity as it speaks to working with providers to deliver or work to build out services. One of the things that we implemented in Trinidad and Tobago and spent quite a bit of time to develop was the whole notion of e-procurement. E-procurement to ensure that we have the traceability, the transparency associated with the increased expenditure associated with the need to roll out services to support citizens during these times. That's one perspective. Another perspective in terms of being able to have to demonstrate that transparency and as we deliver services revolves around the use of the analytics as we deliver services in various ministries. one of the challenges that I often hear citizens raise revolves around service requests to ministries, departments, agencies, and the ability to understand where their requests is in the scheme of things, particularly as it relates to social services delivery. So we feel those are the two particular areas where we paid some particular attention and developed some solutions to respond to what is, I would say, a constant challenge, which has been exacerbated by the current scenario.
Thank you. Is there any other country? Do Grenada or the Bahamas want to add something to this?
Bahamas. I agree with Mr. Henry with regards to the social services. It's really critical at this time to make sure that persons still have access to your safety protection programs. And this is one of the things that we put in the forefront. Luckily for us, we had already engaged in producing services. However, we were looking more at the back end because, of course, you're thinking about people coming in and making requests. So we had to fast forward and push the online services out. And one thing, it brought to the forefront that digital identity, it's very key. It kind of holds you back on some of the things that you would like to introduce with regards to the new technologies available. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We have an issue that has been brought up several times, I think, by different panelists. It's the issue of innovation. There is a participant asked in relation to innovation in relation to digital government in response to the pandemic. In a situation where funding is severely limited, what has helped to minimize the tendency for buying technology for technology's sake before comprehensively analyzing problems, especially in a situation where the pandemic is pushing for immediate technological solutions? I would like to give the floor to anybody who would like to answer this question. So open to the entire panel.
This is Nigel from CTU. I'm not sure. Could you just repeat it again, please?
Okay. So the question says, the question is as follows. In a situation where funding is severely limited, what has helped to minimize the tendency for buying technology for technology's sake before comprehensively analyzing problems, especially in a situation where the pandemic is pushing for immediate technological solutions? Was that clear?
Reasonably so. We are looking at basically funding innovation and solutions where funding is limited. There aren't really a lot of options available there. However, what we can do is one of the things that the CTU has been putting to its members who have been in a state of constrained resources even before COVID-19, is to take the approach that our development is not something that we can depend on others to do for us. No Santa Claus is going to come and bring resources for us to do our development. We have to take responsibility for our development. So specifically, over the last, I would say at least 3 years, maybe more, one of the things that CTU has been pushing is a collaborative funding mechanism among our member states, whereby since we are at different stages of development and some might require more assistance than others, if we all contribute together into, say, a pool of funds, right, a kind of a revolving fund. We have different names for it around the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago. We talk about a SUSU, where different people get together, pool funds, and they use it in turn. So, and we have institutions in the Caribbean that maybe we can use, financial institutions, and maybe we can use as a repository for these funds, right? But the idea is you're pushing our member states, to take a full stake in their own development, put some funds together and share the funds, work more collaboratively together. So that's one of the possible strategies that we put forward.
Can I add to Nigel on this one?
Go ahead.
Because I think funding will always be limited. It will always be severely limited. That is a standard these days. So I think funding is not really the issue in my view. Innovation, the imperative of innovation is the issue, especially with respect to youth and youth unemployment. If we create the environment, the enabling environment for that budding entrepreneurship and innovation among our youths, and that is where we need to go. We need to offer something to the world, and I think that we have an opportunity, in my view, to enable our youths to be creative, to be those digital engineers of the future, and to create solutions not only for us, but solutions that can offer to the world. So that knowledge economy that we have in here, that we're striving to create, I think it depends not only on funding, but it depends on ensuring that we have the policy framework, the political will, and the wherewithal to ensure that we create that environment for youth innovation. So in my view, it is a combination of things, and we cannot sit and think it's only a funding issue.
So,
Moderator.
So I just want to endorse what Nigel and Mr. Roach just said. It's not always about a fund, but equally important is to create that innovative culture and to remove some of the barriers to innovation. So we've seen in Trinidad and several other countries in the region where we have people developing apps, very good apps. So Canto would have run hackathon, and these apps would have has great potential. But after they develop the app, there's no foundation, there's no way for them to encourage commercialization of the apps. So what we've done at Canto is showcasing the apps, showcasing little startup funding projects to our members and stakeholders who might be interested in going directly to the developers and helping them get their applications and get their innovation in a state of readiness to take to the world. And the success story so far has been very few, but it's not all about funding. You can find other ways. We have to find creative ways to take our local innovators and put them out there so other people will see them. And platforms like this one, like the CTU, CARICOM platform, Canto platform, we have to carve a space for these innovative minds to showcase their products and services to the rest of the world with the resources that we have.
Yes, Devon Road from CARICOM.
Jump in here for a second.
Yes, I believe that. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Rowe, go ahead.
Okay, I believe that there's a need for integrated national planning and whole of government planning in this regard to ensure that the, as my colleague was saying, the youth, the arrangements for the creative industry, for the infrastructure and enabling environment is in place. And I think we need to approach it deliberately. We need to approach it deliberately with carefully thought through plans, which of course have to be flexible. But I think in addition to that as well, to some amount of scenario planning will also have to be executed in terms of the objectives that we are seeking to achieve. Thank you.
Okay, I'll now give the floor to Mr. Kirk Henry. I think you wanted to add something. You had a comment as well.
Thank you very much. Just to be clear, the question you asked was, how do we ensure that we have the right spend given the scarce resource of funding as it relates to ICT solutions. And I just want to add a perspective here, and it revolves around ensuring that there are mechanisms that exist in the public sector to map the strategic intent of the policy that would translate into actual ICT spend in the IT, and that's a common problem that exists in the IT space. And I would have mentioned it in responding to the earlier question when I raised the whole notion of the governance of enterprise IT, because what appropriate governance does, it ensures that the underlying activities in ministries, departments, and agencies are aligned with government objective. So, and through mechanisms that will map the policy intent to the actual capital expenditure in most instances, and or even some of the associated recurrent expenditure that would pop up. I also just want to comment quickly on the notion of innovation. Now, innovation is something that, and in this part of the world, that we talk a lot about it, and it's something that's very important. But part and parcel with innovation, as I am sure the panelists would agree, the reward associated with innovation also comes with risk. And historically, the culture, my experience has been that we tend to be a bit risk averse, and we need to have the attendant mindset across the board as we move forward, because we want to encourage the innovation, but we also must create an enabling environment so that when the organizations and the institutions attempt to move forward, they could fail fast, learn from the failure, and move on. But that is something that traditionally in this part of the world we have been a bit averse to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to move to the next question. As panelists have mentioned, COVID is forcing rapid transformation in the digitization space. Are we keeping pace on advancing digital security and privacy of our citizens' data? And how do we ensure citizen buy-in in this transformation, particularly in the security and data privacy field? I would like to give the floor to anybody in the panel who would like to respond.
I think it is, in my view, this is a very critical issue. And we see that many countries and many regions around the world are putting in place data protection legislation. I think the time has reached when we as a region should be doing likewise. I understand that Jamaica has done, and I think we need to benefit from the Jamaican experience and the law, and really create a regional data protection policy and regulatory framework. I think that will be very useful for us, and it will be critical to how we treat with data and manage and collect data in the next period. Thank you.
If I might add to what Dr. Thomas just said there, Nigel Casimir.
Go ahead.
Yes, I fully agree. Just to add some information that this area, data protection and the policies associated with it, is something we at the CTU review, I would say at least annually, in our Caribbean Internet Governance Forum. And there are some consultants around the Caribbean who provide the information to the forum, and they give us like a scorecard of the current state of data protection legislation and so on around the Caribbean. So it is something that we are looking at the CTU, and it is something that we probably have some resources around the Caribbean as well to help foster greater collaboration and advancement around the Caribbean with respect to that. So just wanted to add that into the mix. Thanks.
Thank you. There is another question from a participant asking, if so many factors are aligned, what is preventing us from implementation across the region? Sorry, Is this? Did you hear my message? Did you hear the question? If so many actors are aligned, what is preventing us from implementation across the region? So again, anybody in the panel who would want to give you the floor.
Well, I'm not quite sure if we even implemented. Oops. Implementation. I think there is implementation happening at various levels in the region. Maybe what the caller is insinuating that we need to go faster and maybe together and make more progress as we go forward. So I think that could be a very fair question, but I think it requires that comprehensive look, that looking through the eyes of the single economy, CARICOM single economy and space, as just really indicated by the CTU and what the work that the CTU has been doing. I think it requires that level of planning, but I will also say that things are happening. Maybe not at the pace as the questioner may think, but things are happening. We are actually implementing, but I think it requires maybe some measure of acceleration and more comprehensive planning and access to the information that we require to go forward.
I agree with Spencer, and I would want to put in one small piece here that there is a need for broad-basing change management skills as well. Change management skills that would aid the implementation, because there is implementation occurring, but it varies across the region, and it varies because countries are at different levels of development and face different realities, even though we have similar experiences. In addition as well to, I think, and I think this is where Spencer was alluding to as well, to there needs to be more peer-to-peer sharing of experiences and successes across the region, so that we don't keep remaking the wheel, but that we can accelerate the process of implementation based on the successes elsewhere. Thanks.
Madam Moderator?
Yes, Jennifer?
This is Jennifer. Yes, I've been trying to jump in, but I had some trouble with my undoing my mic since innovation. I wanted to, I guess, coin two answers with regard to the question that came about with innovation and even this one with implementation. And I hope that the panelists don't get mad with me and start sending me messages on social media. But I think a lot of our challenges in the region are not, a lot of the innovation and the solutions that are needed in the region are not even digital solutions or digital innovation. It's just about taking the plunge in doing something new and opening up ourselves, I think, to new ways of solving problems with new, perhaps, people who we haven't had at the table before. And one of the things that has been on my mind, even as we prepared for this webinar, is that COVID-19 has forced us to look at leadership and what leadership competencies will be needed to take us over the hump. And that is something that I think the region needs to look at, not because there is somebody at the helm of an organization or at the helm of a committee. It means that that is the leader who is going to take you over the hump. Some of the colleagues talked about the fact that we need a whole of government approach. And CARICOM ICT ministers actually agreed to a whole of government approach last November. Obviously, COVID came and overtook us, but how do we really articulate that as an implementation opportunity for the region to move forward? The third thing that comes to my mind is that we have to be moving forward, it's probably Dr. Sven said, together, but we also have to know where we're moving forward to. And a number of people have been either not well informed or religiously ignoring the information about the single ICT space and the mandate which came from all of our heads of government that we're working on this. And so I think that there are three things. We have the CARICOM single market and economy. The single ICT space is going to be supporting the digital efforts, but also COVID-19 in our space now is a new, it's a new input factor, and it is probably the only solution for the things that happen in COVID-19 is resolving them in our regional objectives. But I think also of the fact that the bigger thing for me with regard to implementation is that government now has to put itself in the place of a customer, and I'm not sure that that's easy, because government, in terms of even providing the enabling environment, must be able to be strong enough to purchase services from the same innovators we've been talking about, our local entrepreneurs and local persons who will, in fact, comprise the innovation layer that we need. So government itself, it has to put itself in a new mindset and in a new position for putting itself out there as a customer and having these services procured on its behalf to be able to enable the rest of the society, etc. Lastly, in this point, because I may not get a chance to speak again, is the fact that as our implementation opportunities and our implementation psyche is mature, we also have to be the recipients, I think, of innovative financing and solutions, because as I spoke at the beginning of our session here today about the education issues are our human capital issues, which will eventually touch probably every citizen in the society. So it can't be that the education ministries are procuring for the digital skills needs of the community, if you understand what I mean. So even in that, the financing has to be innovative, that a government or 20 governments can come together and put up a digital skills proposal which is acceptable to our international development partners across the world. And I hope some of them are listening on this call, and even our diaspora supporters, so that the flexibility itself has to be in government to open up itself for new implementation opportunities. We have to have the innovative types of financing. It can't be siloed financing. And then there are also some other human factor issues, which I think will help us to either move forward well with implementation or stay where we are. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you. I think quite a lot of issues come back also to the aspects that have been highlighted by Mr. Devon Rowe, also with regards to change management and the public sector transformation that needs to be accelerated to a certain extent. I have one question that is related to the digital divide in the Caribbean region. How can the digital divide be addressed going forward? And again, I would want to address that question to anybody in the panel. I have to highlight that we have a couple of minutes left, so I would like to close this session by 3:25. So just for you to be aware. So if anybody in the panel would like to touch upon the issue of the digital divide in the Caribbean region and how this could be addressed going forward. Thank you.
Nigel Casimir here from CTU. I don't think that's a simple answer question, because it's not like a homogeneous answer throughout the Caribbean. Like, as was said, countries are at different stages of development, and the challenges vary throughout as you go from country to country. So I don't see a short, simple answer to that. One might look at it from the point of view of interconnectivity, and interconnectivity is, I would say, generally quite good right now. There are a few little places a few links that might be missing or worthy of strengthening, but the intra-Caribbean linkages are generally quite good. But I'm not seeing a simple answer, because it is a complex problem that is characterized by differences in each of the Caribbean countries. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Spencer again. I mean, again, I don't want to be controversial, but in my view, there will always be a digital divide. I mean, because you have so many different parameters in which you could determine what a digital divide is all about. It could be within countries, it could be across different sectors, it's all kinds of stuff. The question is, we need that planning, that comprehensive planning, and have the resources to address the specific problem that we are facing. And we may not be able to address all of the digital divide issues at the same time, but the critical ones, of course. I mean, in the old days, 20 years ago, we talk about universal service funding, which basically was to have a telephone in every house. That was the kind of thing we talk about 20 years ago. Today is a completely different story. So the question of digital divide needs to be unpacked, disaggregated, I mean, and dealt with. But it's something that will always be with us. I think the point is we need to ensure that everyone has a minimum level of digital literacy and digital access so that they are able to function within the communities in which they are.
If I could just say, Carol, Bahamas, I think the difference now is that the persons that are in the digital divide are now realizing that they're in the digital divide because now they are trying to get their kids to get on online school, especially the public schools. And they're realizing, hey, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't know how. And I think now that they are going to get more involved in demanding that, hey, I need to get out of the situation that I'm in. So I think the pandemic will probably cause a shift on who the important stakeholder is, and the stakeholder now will probably have a chance to be heard.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'd like to have a final. Sorry, somebody wanted to make a comment.
I want to put my two.
Okay, go ahead, Teresa.
I want to put my 2 cents in about the digital divide, and I hear exactly what Nigel and Dr. Spencer is saying, but I think this platforms like these, we have to find creative ways of closing that gap, or else the gap will get wider. So I'm not saying that there's a one size fit all, but forums like these have to come together to find ways to close that gap, or else in 10 years' time, we'll be still having this conversation and saying that it's not. So I'm hearing what they're saying, and I'm hearing the views of the panel, but I think we have to do more as an industry to come together and help bridge that gap. I don't know, I don't have the answer. But I'm saying that we have to find ways of closing that gap, or some of our people will always get left behind, and then we cannot say we have access for all.
Right. Very just one
thing. Nigel and Dr. Spencer, you have to excuse me. I'm a little bit passionate about this because I'm from a very, very rural part of Trinidad and Tobago. So the digital divide always strikes me on a wrong chord. So
very somebody else want to speak?
I don't know. Is that I hear Jennifer, but is there anybody else who wanted to speak?
Yeah, if I can jump in, if you can hear me, yes, because
go ahead. Sure. Because, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Because my connection is not working very well. Talking about digital divide. I was really listening, and all the participants on this discussion about digital divide. Let me say that although I agree that it's not easy to identify to have a one definition for digital divide, but we can use proxy. And if we look at the e-government survey, and we have 3 major indicators. One is about the service, or the online services. The other one is about infrastructure, and the other one is about human capital. And then if you see, and these 3, they are the one that they created the AGDI. And if you see the differences between countries on the AGDI level, you can have a proxy on what digital divide means. Because if you look, for example, at the group of the leading countries with the highest rating class, we are talking about 14 countries, most of them from Europe. All of them are packed with the same, almost the same AGDI level. But then when you look at the LDCs and the SIDS, you see really a very big distance between this. So I agree that we cannot as we go to the definition, becomes very difficult. But I also I agree on the things that we need to be able to provide services to all. as if we are not able to provide services to all, if we are not able to provide services to all the vulnerable people, and also if we have some countries that lag behind, this is a big issue, and this is still about digital divide. So sorry, I didn't want to take too much time. There is more to say on this, but I do believe also that a regional cooperation, multi-stakeholder initiatives also can work on this side. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vincenzo. I think that maybe let me go finally to Mrs. Britton.
Thanks, Veronica. I think Nigel was waving his hand, so I'll try to be short. I think Vincenzo touched on a lot of the things, and I wanted to agree with Dr. Spence in the sense that he started with a digital divide definition that we could all work on. But again, at the level of SIDS, I feel a lot of stress in the sense that the international world and the larger countries, those who are performing well in e-government survey, for example, continue to add layers to the hopefully the simpleness or the complexity of the issue. And so the digital divide now has several input areas which contribute to it. And I think Vincenzo mentioned some of them, but there's also age, there's where you live, it's your health and wellness, ability, all of those things which now support the digital divide. And recently, probably about in the last 6 to 9 months, we are now being encouraged to look at a definition for accessibility, which talks about affordable accessibility, which also has more layers in it. So I'm making the last plug, since this is a seminar for SIDS, that we also have the opportunity to be at the table when some of these decisions are made, and not just as window dressing, but we need to be there really strategically with our problems, because the world has galloped away. We all started at the same page, probably in the year 2000, and the rest of the world has galloped away without, I think, taking into consideration the needs of the SIDS. And I want to submit that I think a lot of the new innovation and solutions will emerge from the SIDS because we've had so many problems. But if we don't have the support of the whole international community, then things like digital divide, etc., seem unsurmountable, and we continue to just marinate in this space where we're trying to meet definitions and meet levels which are not being facilitated by others who have passed this way before. Sorry to have taken so much time, Nigel. I leave the rest up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. If I may, Madam Moderator, it's a very short intervention.
Go ahead. It's the final word.
Yeah, on this issue of digital divide, the dimensions, and I'm sure some of the dimensions are not even being measured in the EGDI at present. I just wanted to highlight a comment in the chat on this. Here in Guyana, we are challenged with frequent power outages that disrupt learning online. That widens the digital divide if that family cannot afford a generator. So just to illustrate the complexity of the problem. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a point that I wanted to make as well. So I think it is indeed, it's obvious that this discussion, this is basically just the beginning. So I think it's obvious that as a region, there is a need and an appetite as well to continue to have those kind of discussions to move forward. With regards to the question or the comment from Jennifer in terms of not forgetting to include the SIDS, I think it's from the DESA point of view, and this is basically this is part of the closing remarks of this webinar. We in DESA have a SIDS unit that is definitely constantly making sure that we include the issue and the challenges of the SIDS state. So in that regard, from DESA is definitely going to further pay attention to the SIDS states. But I just want to invite all the partners to continue the discussion. We will definitely make sure that this report, there is going to be a report of this webinar. This is going to be shared, and we would encourage all of the partners to continue this kind of discussions. We hope also that this has been of interest to all of you. and that it can contribute to the initiatives that have already been taken. From my side, I wish to thank all the speakers for their inspiring contributions and also the participants for their active participation. We will share an evaluation form. I also think that this is important for those who participated, as well as the panelists, that you will try to fill out this form, because that gives us a bit of a sense of whether you found this useful and how can we follow up this kind of initiatives, given the fact that there is clearly an interest, not only from the participants, but also from the panelists. I also wanted to highlight that the presentation of the panelists, as well as that of Vincenzo, will be shared and will be part of the report. The webinar, so the results of this webinar will be distributed on the website that has been the link that is now shared in the presentation on the screen. So, I would basically like to thank you all for this, for your time, and thank you for your participation. Keep safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. So we now end this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, UNDESA. Thank you, participants.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to everyone, and congratulations.